Street art is a very prominent art movement that has had waves of influence throughout all of pop culture. According to the Tate Museum of Modern Art, street art is related to graffiti in that it is created in public locations and is usually unsanctioned, but covers a wider range of media and is more connected with graphic design. Street art is a movement that consists of all kinds of works, but throughout this presentation, we will primarily be focusing on the very early artists. We will be looking at the origins of graffiti, a prominent early graffiti artist named Mr. Eternity, and the muralist movement.
Hello, my name is Andrew. I'll be talking about the origin of graffiti. So basically, I'll be talking about where it came from, who was the first to done it, and I'll be also talking about other graffiti artists. So the first person I'll be talking about, he created it, so supposedly he created it, was Darryl McCray. So he basically done his graffiti during his time in juvie in Philadelphia in 1965. So basically his graffiti artist name was Cornbread. So basically his first thing he done was in a bathroom. He did it with black paint and put his name Cornbread on it. So where he got his name is basically from the chefs or cooks from the juvie. So basically he done it everywhere in the church, mess hall, his cell, everywhere. And also when it was released, he kept doing it. So he done colliding with other graffiti artists such as Cool Clip the Kid, and he done like everywhere. Is still considered as a crime, but the most serious one he done was he went in a zoo and put his name on an elephant, and he got time in jail. And when he got famous when some of the guards asked him for his autograph, his street name. And another artist that we'll be discussing is almost during the time when he was becoming big, but this time it took place in New York. And this artist's name was Tacky 183. The name Tacky comes from the Greek name Demetrius, and 183 is his street address. He wasn't the first to done this, making his name with his street address, but he was the first New York graffiti artist that became famous in New York. So he basically done it as a job. Other graffiti artists had done it as hobbies, but for him it was a job. He chose the spots very carefully so people can see. So he done fire hydrants, lampposts, built one-on buildings and subway cars, and and also he basically was considered the first one graffiti artist. He was interviewed by reporters. That's when he became big. So basically, the main reason for graffiti existed was to make a name for themselves, so they could mark their name and inspire others, and others have been inspired. And throughout the 60s, maybe almost towards the 70s, people will put graffiti. Then we all know in the future, graffiti has evolved into street art, into murals, paintings. But I'm pretty sure murals were going around, but not on buildings or anything. But I believe that art is art; it should be expressed, and people should not take it negatively. But this is what they want to express through art to other people.
I will be talking about an early street artist that went by the name of Mr. Eternity. Arthur Malcolm Stantz was born on February 9th, 1885. Stantz had a rough childhood as he was brought up in poverty with alcoholic parents. He was a troubled kid and ended up in jail at the age of 15. After he was released, he enlisted for World War I at age 32 with the Australian Imperial Force. He was then medically discharged and returned home to Australia. The results of serving in the war had broken Stantz as he developed shell shock from his experience. This resulted in him becoming an alcoholic. Stantz decided to make the decision to convert to Christianity after hearing an inspirational sermon.
Eternity. I you really belonging to Jesus Christ? Then, out of your lips will spring the word eternity sometime or other. It'll leap out of your lips because it's born in your heart.
As a newly devoted Christian, he was inspired by God to spread his message by writing the word eternity. Stantz would then write eternity all over the streets of Sydney in chalk. He went unnoticed for many years as he did not want to take credit, but instead wanted to spread God's message. People referred to this unknown artist as Mr. Eternity. Stantz would wake up in the early morning each day at 4 a.m. and would pray to God to lead him to an area to spread his message for the day. He would go around cities in Australia writing the word eternity for about 4 hours each day, then return home in time for breakfast. Stantz wrote the word eternity for 35 years before he passed in 1967. Although he had a rough childhood, became a criminal, and was broken by war, he turned his life around for the better and followed a path of faith. On New Year's Eve in 1999, there was a sign displayed on the harbor of Sydney Bridge that said Eternity in honor of Stantz.
The Muralist movement took place during the 1920s until the 1940s. A mural is any illustration that is painted onto a ceiling or wall. The movement began in Mexico after the Revolution, and the murals were initially commissioned by the government to be painted in churches, schools, and in high-profile government buildings. The original goal the government had in commissioning artists to paint large-scale murals was to inform the population and to create a nationalist consciousness. The three prominent figures during the Muralist movement were Diego Rivera, Jose Clemente Orozco, and David Alfaro Siqueiros. As these muralists began to renounce the idea that they were confined by government buildings, they decided to branch out to the United States in order to gain more recognition. One technique that was used in order to transport murals was portable fresco, and consisted of panels that were made with lattice work substrate covered by concrete and several coats of plaster held together by a heavy steel frame. Other formats that were used in order for more people to witness the murals in the United States was by distributing photographic reproductions and lithographs. The first to gain recognition in the U.S. was Diego Rivera when he participated in the Mexican art exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art. He created 8 pieces for the exhibition, one of which was derived from an original mural he had done in Palacio de Cortes, Cuernavaca, that depicted the history of Cuernavaca and Morelos. Second, David Alfaro Siqueiros made a mural called Tropical America that is located in Los Angeles by Olvera Street. The image illustrates a Mexican Indian being crucified on a cross and was meant to be a critique of United States imperialism. The third prominent figure in the Muralist movement is Jose Clemente Orozco. He had also created pieces for the Museum of Modern Art that consisted of 6 panels and was called Dive, Bomber, and Tank. It displayed the destruction of 2 machines of war and the destruction it left behind. It gained notoriety for its expressionism and its ability to demonstrate several social relevant themes. Although highly political artworks, their aesthetic of using more abstract themes in their murals laid the foundation for the abstract expressionist movement to later embrace the large-scale and experiential aspects of muralism.
A debate that is often had about this art movement is if graffiti is art or vandalism. On one hand, it is something that draws attention and is interesting to look at, but on another hand, it is destructive and can hurt businesses. Muralism is easily considered art because it is commissioned for and wanted, but lots of graffiti artists can have varying motivations behind their works. When discussing different motivations for graffiti, the University of Michigan states, "Gangs seek to be deliberately destructive and instill fear. Taggers seek notoriety and respect." This states that many graffiti artists have many different motivations, but all in all, it is interesting to take this into account when looking at these types of works. Hopefully, this makes you appreciate street art and the vast world that has been created from it. The signature is as old as time itself. Making and leaving a mark is important to our human experience. Ian Vanek, a street artist from New York.